The difference between the young man you are right now and the young man you wish to become is literally one decision away. And most young men never make it. I don't want you guys to be like other young men. Listen, bro, nothing changes if nothing changes. If you don't change who you are today, you're always gonna be that young man that you currently are. You know, I had to make a decision for myself to change. The young man that you see today is not the young man I was 5 years ago. When I was 15 years old, I didn't like the young man I was. You know, I didn't like how I looked. I was very skinny. I wasn't very secure in myself. I didn't find myself very attractive. I didn't have a lot of confidence in myself. The truth was, I didn't like who I was as a young man. At 15 years old, I didn't like where my life was headed. You know, I always knew I wanted more out of life. I always knew I had more potential within myself. I had the vision and I saw who I could have became, you know? And that's when I made the decision to change my life. When I was 15 years old, everything changed. Everything changed because I made the decision. I made the decision to improve myself. I started working on myself. I started working on my physique. I started stepping out of my comfort zone. I started changing my mindset. I started changing who I was because I always wanted to be my greatest version. I always knew that there was greatness within me. You know, within inside of me, I always knew there was greatness. And I didn't make no excuses, and I made the decision. Listen, bro, all you have to do to change your life is make that decision. What is the decision? Make the decision to change your life. When you make the decision to change your life, this is when you're actually gonna change. When you stop making excuses and you stop blaming exterior factors for why you're not changing, for why you're not different, this is when your life is actually gonna change. That was when my life changed. My life changed when I decided it was time to change my life. You gotta set your mind to it. As young men, it is very critical and crucial for us to become our greatest version. I know you wanna be better than the rest. I know you don't wanna be an average young man. I know you want success at an early age. I know you wanna become your greatest version at an early age. So in order for you to do that, you gotta make that decision today. You gotta decide today that you're tired of being the young man that you currently are. You're fed up by the way you look. You're fed up by the way you feel. You know, when you look in the mirror, you're fed up by what you see in the mirror. You don't like the fact that you're not getting what you want out of life. I was in that same boat. I didn't like who I was becoming. And if I didn't make any changes, nothing was gonna change. Nothing is gonna change until you decide to change. Nothing is gonna change until you decide to quit your bad habits. Nothing is gonna change until you let that toxic friend group go. You gotta let that toxic friend group go. Nothing is gonna change unless you're willing to give up the comfort zone. Nothing is gonna change until you decide that you no longer want to be who you are. You know what it takes to become the young man that you need to be. Where you're at right now is comfortable. The comfort zone is destroying the potential that you have within yourself. You have to understand that the comfort zone is your enemy. You know, I didn't want my potential to die. I always knew what I wanted out of life and I went after it. You know, I wasn't gonna allow my comfort zone to be the reason why I couldn't make the change. That decision I made 5 years ago was the best decision that I made in my life. When I decided to pursue my greatest version in every single area of my life, that's when I saw changes. That's when I really saw the changes that I wanted to see. I started to work out and work on my body because I didn't like my body. I didn't like the young man that I was becoming. So what I had to do, I had to get the knowledge that I needed to go to the gym, to eat the right foods, to get the right amount of nutrition that I needed to build the body that I wanted. And it was consistency. You know, for you to become the young man that you want to be, you have to be consistent. You're gonna learn as you get older that consistency is the key to your success. You can't succeed at anything in life without being consistent. I knew I didn't have too much confidence within myself, so I had to change my look. I had to improve the way I looked. I changed up my hairstyle. I worked on my skin every single day. I worked on my skin. I stopped eating junk food. I started eating cleaner. I started drinking more water because I was fed up of who I was becoming. I was fed up of who I was. I started to step out of my comfort zone. I knew that the comfort zone was holding me down, holding my potential. So I got uncomfortable. For you to make the change and for you to become the young man that you're meant to be, you're gonna have to get uncomfortable. This is one of the hardest truths in life. The more you could get uncomfortable, the closer you are to becoming that young man that you always wanted to be. Change isn't easy. Change is painful. Every single day, you're gonna have to work for that change. But pain is temporary. You know that pain isn't gonna last forever. You know that if you keep going down this uncomfortable path, you're gonna eventually hit that goal that you want to hit. You're gonna eventually change into the young man that you want to change into. The only way you're gonna make change is by taking 100% responsibility for your life. Nobody is gonna come to save you. Nobody's coming to save you, bro. You gotta put in the work yourself. There's not gonna be anybody encouraging you. There's not gonna be anybody by your side clapping for you. It has to be you and you alone. You have to be your own hero. You have to change your life for the better. We can't keep putting things off for tomorrow. When we keep moving back the deadline, you're only making the progress slower. I'm not saying you gotta rush the process, but the longer you keep putting these things off, working on yourself, becoming your greatest version, the longer you keep putting that off, the more work you're gonna give to your future self. Eventually, you're gonna become your future self. Your future self, whether you like it or not, one day you're gonna be that future self and you're gonna have to make the decision again. Stop putting things off and do what you have to do. You know what you gotta do, bro. You know that you gotta work on yourself. You know that you gotta change. And the change is possible. I changed my life because I wanted to. That one decision made me go on an upward spiral. Just because of that one decision, I am a completely different man today. And this is what I want you guys to understand. When you guys hit my age, I want you guys to feel proud of the young man you've became. But it's only gonna happen if you make that decision. With that being said, chase greatness. When you chase greatness, everything else will be added onto your life.